During last year's long lockdown, many people struggled with feelings of boredom, of loneliness, frustration, isolation, of anger and sadness. And difficult though those feelings are, they're a completely natural response to what was a very challenging situation for many of us. And it's actually important that we allow ourselves, when we do feel these things, to notice them, to acknowledge them, and I guess to allow ourselves to voice them, to take them to God in prayer and say, God, here's what I'm feeling. I don't like this, but this is what's going on for me right now. And that's true whether it is in fact from a communal experience like lockdown last year, or whether our own personal and private experiences of our own sickness, our own failures, our own losses, that can also give rise to these feelings. These feelings are all okay. But for some people, they cascade into something far worse, which is despair. And despair is not okay. Despair is in fact a sin because it denies the presence of God and the action of God. For to despair says that everything is awful and nothing will ever get better, and that God is not with me now, and that God can never be with me, and God will never do anything for me. And that denial, that is certainly a sin. And so if we actually have ever felt that, it's something we might really try and deal with in repenting of. And what we need to do, though, after we repent, or even before we do, is seek the virtue of hope. Hope is not just positive thinking. Hope is a gift from God. It is an infused virtue. That is to say, there's something God gives us and infuses into us, along with faith and love, as an antidote to despair. Hope says, no matter what the situation is, no matter how dark it may seem, that I know that God is with me, and that God can and will make a difference as I move forward. Indeed, I can move forward because of God's abiding presence. It's remarkable that people who can suffer greatly and yet with hope continue to move on, live actually quite remarkable lives. Hope is really important because I think it makes sense of what we hear in the gospel today, as Jesus gives us these rather counterintuitive teachings we call the Beatitudes, where Jesus says, blessed are you who are poor. Blessed are you when people speak badly of you. Blessed are you when you suffer and when you mourn and you weep. How can this be blessed? How can this be good? Well, it is only if we allow hope to take hold, that in our darkest, most challenging times, God gives the gift of hope to lift us up. But Jesus goes on to give some perhaps even more counterintuitive and challenging teachings, where he then says, after he says, blessed are you if you are poor, he says, woe to you if you are rich, woe to you, or alas for you, if you are doing well, if people think well of you, if you're happy and joyful. He says, well, possibly alas to you. Why? Because this can breed a certain self-sufficiency. That we say, well, this is all my own doing. I don't need God. I can just kind of cruise along. And it can bring a complacency, but also a certain fragility. That if we are accustomed to always being rich, successful, popular, things being easy for us, then often we actually can crumble at the first sign of a challenge. And maybe for some of us, lockdown last year was a time when that happened for us. For us, for those who are accustomed to doing so well in life, we might look at people, young people perhaps who have always breezed through school and are academically successful, but then the first time they fail something, or a young person with their first relationship breakdown, or the first time that or think of young athletes who are promising on their way up, but the first time they have a terrible failure, they can often come crashing down in a terrible way. And so there's certain fragility from being used to having everything work well. And that, I think, might be why Jesus then says, alas for you, woe for you, if things are always going well and on your side. Not that God doesn't want the best for us, but sometimes we need to recognize that God is the giver of gifts, not that we do it ourselves. And if we do find ourselves crashing, then it's our turn to then turn to hope and say, God, I need your gift of hope to be infused into me, to lift me up again. Well, astute listeners and readers of the Bible might notice that this version of the Beatitudes we hear today in Luke's Gospel is a little bit different to the maybe more common version of the Beatitudes we hear in Matthew's Gospel. In Matthew's Gospel, there are simply 8 blessings, but here there are 4 blessings and 4, curses. Why the difference, and which one did Jesus really say? Well, if you notice carefully, In Matthew's gospel, Jesus addresses the crowds. To thousands of people on the hillside, Jesus presents, I guess, his popular pitch to as many people as possible. As people come from the countryside, they come and listen to him before they've made a commitment to him. And he's presenting all the best and most, I guess, selling the benefits of following him. But here in Luke's gospel, we hear that Jesus addresses his disciples, those who've made a decision from amongst the crowds to attach themselves to Jesus. And to them, and that includes us, we who are disciples, Jesus gives the next level teaching that yes, there is blessing, there is God's sustaining, abiding help in our tough times, but there's also challenges to face too. There are things to avoid, vices and warnings to avoid that we who take our following of Jesus seriously need to watch out for. Not to become self-sufficient, not to become complacent, but rather to always recognize that all is good and given to us is a gift from God, that we might come in gratitude, and to look to the virtue of hope when we need it, when we struggle, that we can indeed say, Lord, I need you so much. I pray your gift of hope to come and lift me up.